Yes, my name is Fernanda, and I'll present you a methodology that was developed by a team of us. But before starting, I would like to thank the Gender Transformative webinar series and the people who organized this space, especially Kathy and Jessica, for all their support and inviting us to be here. So thank you. Thank you a lot. It's a great space to share and learn from each other what we're doing. And I wanted to mention that this is a collaborative effort in many, many ways. The methodology was developed by two initiatives in CGR, in the Alliance Bioversity and CIAT, that now have become science programs. And it's also a collaboration between colleagues in different parts of the world with different trainings. We developed the methodology and implemented it in Honduras with coffee, but also in India with tea. And we also had the support of the local university in Honduras, the Autonomous University, and a colleague from Nicaragua who was working, who was a visiting researcher. So it was a collaborative effort in that sense, but also with partners. In Honduras, with two exporting companies and one international NGO, and in India with the Ethical Tea Partnership. So we started with two premises. The first one was, okay, so now we know that gender equality and most stakeholders in the agri-food supply system, chain, know that gender equality is important for many issues, not just for because of justice, social justice and gender justice, but also because it's good for social sustainability, economic sustainability of the supply chain, right? But the question that was coming up was, how do we do this? How do we create more gender equal spaces and supply chains? And so one of the things that we saw through the process was that a lot of stakeholders didn't know who were the women who were participating in their supply chain, why they were involved, what were the benefits they were obtaining, what were the opportunities they were seeing in the supply chain, what were the needs they had and the challenges they were facing. And also the fact that they were very diverse. That was something that was ignored in many ways, that the diversity of women involved. So we developed a methodology to typologize women in the supply chain so that we would know who they are, and the companies and other stakeholders would know who they are and be able to better target their gender programming. So this is what I'm going to present, and I'm going to try to be brief. But basically, the methodology is qualitative. So we were focused on understanding through in-depth interviews and direct observation. It was not about quantifying things, but understanding what women involved in the supply chain were experiencing. It was consultative all the way through the process. We always discussed from the start with our partners and also with the participants what we were doing, the results that we were getting, and we were receiving always and asking for feedback. It is an intersectional methodology to the extent that we understand gender as shaped by and in relation to other social categories. And this was very important because one of the things that was important for us to underline is that diverse women also experience gender norms and gender constraints in very different ways, actually. And there are some similarities, but also some differences. It is supply chain specific and contextual, and it is iterative. So it was open for reformulation throughout the process because and through this discussion and validation with those who were participating in the process. And it had 4 steps. The first step is to understand the context of the supply chain and in the region where we were working. And this was done mainly through literature review, but also through focus groups and individual questions with members of the company or the stakeholders that we were, that one wants to apply the methodology with. So you get a sense of how is their supply chain, how the region where they want to work, define together with them where they want to apply the methodology. And once you have that, we go to the second step is step 2, where we go to the places, the communities or the regions that were chosen to be part of this process or where you would apply the methodology and now map the supply chain with the community, with community members, with groups of women and men, with focus groups, and then also carry out individual interviews mostly with men, because we did this methodology with women, although you can do it with other groups. It doesn't have to be with women, actually. And so after doing that, you develop an initial typology, and then you go back to, on the third step, to validate that typology with women. You create a focus group, and you meet with them, you present the typology, and refine the typology, and then through that meeting, you identify women who are part of these different groups, and you carry out in-depth interviews and direct observation in their farms, at their homes, and if possible, in the places where they work, if that is possible. And based on those interviews, you have the final step 4, which is to analyze the findings. And based on those findings, we create a characterization of each type of women, and we discuss these with the company to identify entry points for action. So the methodology doesn't provide the entry points for action. The methodology and the final product, the typology, creates a space and has the information to have a dialogue with, in this case, the company, but it could be other stakeholders, to define, okay, so these are the women who are involved in your supply chain, how to work with them, what sort of activities would support them better. And so this is an example. I just wanted to show you how we created the typology. This is from El Paraíso, Honduras. And I want to say this is a very particular case, because the company has a direct relationship to the producers. And also because it was a very homogeneous ethnically region, but also there was a lot of migration of young people. So it was very hard to map younger people working when we were there. And we ended up creating a typology that was based on the type of relationship to the company of the women, if they had a direct relationship or an indirect relationship, the role in the supply chain, and decision-making power. And I'll show you how this looks. So type 1 was women employed in the company nursery. So the company had a nursery and they employ women there. So that's one type. The second type was women producers working on their own farm who do not manage their farm. These were older women. Type 3 are women producers working on their own farm who manage their farm and made decisions about everything in their farm. And then type 4 are women producers working on their family farms, and this is mostly family labor. And then finally, women harvesters employed by smallholder farmers. So they were not employed by the company, but by the farmers who sold coffee to the company. And I wanted to show you here an example of India, just to get a sense of how different, because of context and supply chain and all that, the typology would be. Here in India, in Assam, where we undertook the work, we applied the methodology, ethnicity was very important. Age was also very important, household land ownership, besides labor relations and role in the supply chain. So this led to a different typology that was based on precisely the age, the ethnicity of the women who were involved, and if they were employed or not, their labor relation, and that was related to having land or not having land of their own. So this is just another example of how a typology could be based on the context and the place where you applied it. And I would love to talk a lot about what we found, but that would be too long. So I just want to show you here how we created what we had at the end. We had, for instance, for type 4 in Honduras, we created like a small paragraph where we summarize what we found, like the characterization, their age, formal education or not, like the assets they had, but also what was the role of coffee in their lives, what they got involved in these, the sort of burdens they had, or not burdens, the ways in which, what were the things that made difficult for them to participate in the supply chain. But also here we emphasize how that was related to gender norms and formal gender norms, but also informal gender norms. And this was very important to underline that it was not the same to be a woman in one group than to be a woman in another group in terms of what they could do, how the norms apply to them. gender norms applied to them and to them. And then we had here the benefits and challenges they experienced. We presented that. And then we had here the possible actions that the company could undertake and that they could undertake in alliance with other stakeholders. Again, this last part we created with the company in this case. So we presented the first two parts of what you see here in the screen, and then we engage in a conversation with the company. What do you see, which women, where do you see that, where have you been working, with whom have you been working, which are the women that you haven't been working, how have you, what sort of things have you done, how can you change those things based on these findings, and that sort of conversation. We had that sort of conversation with them, and then ended up with these possible actions. And I just, before ending, just wanted to show, this is the application of the methodology in another place in Honduras. In this case, what we did, we worked in a place that had more younger people living there, but also it was ethnically diverse. So we created typologies that involve age and ethnicity. And this is just, I just wanted to show how we presented the information to the company. We created this slide to show the characteristics of each type. And then we created another one where we had like issues like where coffee is in their lives, where they see coffee, what is the challenge, the needs that they have in the supply chain. And then these help us to discuss these findings with the company. We tried to, after we had the questions that I mentioned before with the company, like with whom are you working more, what are you doing with them? We created this slide where we use the reach, benefit, empower, and transform framework to identify potential gender actions with them. And this was very important because we wanted to emphasize how gender norms were shaping in different ways their experiences and the opportunities they had in the supply chain, but also the challenges they were facing. And it was important for us to underline that here and to show them where each of the propositions they had in terms of actions, where they would be placed. If they wanted to reach, also what sort of issues they should be taking into account, like when, where, if they provide childcare, what pedagogy they were using. It would be very different for young people than for older people, but also different from those who were not literate, from those who had basic education, formal education. In terms of benefit, we were also we were stressing the structural challenges they had, like health, education, access to those issues, but also economic opportunities in other realms. And showing how many actions could be related to reaching, benefiting, and empower. But also here, well, in terms of empowering, like we underline issues like public recognition of their work and achievements, exchange of experiences, but also economic empowerment in the sense of, increasing the direct purchasing of women and certification of women. And finally, for us, it was very important to underline transformative actions. And here we were emphasizing conducting training and dialogue programs on formal and informal gender norms and how they affect women and men. And we were underlining that this should be done not only with the women and the men who were, participating in the supply chain, who were producers, but also with the staff, with the company staff, with everybody to discuss these issues. And some of the things that we underlined were the burden of domestic work, gender-based violence, decision-making, power. We felt that community and territorial governance issues were relevant to be discussed in these spaces and how they affected differently women and men regarding leadership and participation in decision-making in their communities. We also underlined how important it was to have mentoring programs at community level that would do this kind of engage in these conversations of gender norms, but that could add or feed into this intergenerational women's dialogue that we felt was extremely important between younger and older women to inspire, teach, and accompany them. So, and we found when we were talking with young women that for them, older men and older women in their families had been key in supporting them in getting involved in these processes and in feeling empowered to be part of them. So here, this is the end of my presentation. I just wanted to mention that we're still working on it. It's a working process. Your comments, opinions are important for us. We would like to see how we continue, like how we apply the typology with the monitoring and evaluation of processes. And I just want to say before ending that the typology, the findings were as important as the process. So the process was fundamental, and we saw how if members of the company were involved through the application of the methodology, we saw a difference from when they started as when they ended in their understanding of the people that they were working with. So, and the challenges for women. So yeah, that's what I want to say. And you can apply these not only to companies, it can be applied to other stakeholders in the supply chain, and not only to women, also to other groups. That would be. I don't know if Jessica can share the poll before giving the floor to Jovita.
Thank you, Fernanda. Great presentation, and I think it's a great transition also to my presentation, since my presentation is a little bit more of a field experience and not so much related to explicit gender methodology. First, thank you for everyone for being here, and thank you to Kathy, to Jessica, Fernanda, also to you to be so inspiring to work with you. I will share in a presentation mode my screen, if you allow me, just a second. Yeah, you can see my screen, isn't it? Okay, I have divided the presentation in two parts, actually. And from the first part, I'll present this case study related to a project called Agroecological Regenerative Cocoa. And of course, it's about the cocoa value chain in Latin America. And then I would like to present more personal views and my thoughts about my work with the private sector in the last more than 10 years. I'm senior manager with the Alliance Bioversity CIAT. And I'm Bulgarian born, but have lived and worked in the last 20 years almost, I think, in Latin America. First, let me just show you in the nutshell what the project is about. And I think Jessica shared with you the website of this project, Agroecological Regenerative Cocoa. You know that the collaboration with private sector now is a very hot topic in the CGR. Unfortunately, a lot is said, and there are very few really successful examples about this. What I would like to show you is, in my opinion, something that worked really well. So there's this French chocolate company called Caoca. They have almost 30% of the organic and sustainability cocoa market in France, so they are quite big. And we had a common concern with them. And the common concern was the destruction of the primary Amazon forest. So we joined forces, the Alliance, other partners, C4, ICRAF, Caoca, of course, two cooperatives, one from Colombia, one from Ecuador, and one from Peru. And we had an NGO, Conservation International, the Colombian branch of Conservation International. The project is funded by the French government. So faced with this magnitude of the challenge and all this complexity of the social, economic, and environmental impact, we designed this project. And I said since we collaborated from the beginning. So we co-wrote the proposal, which is not common with all the partners, and we are co-implementing all the activities. sharing risk and benefits, but also co-funding the entire activity. So each partner, the Alliance is the leading organization, but each partner is co-funding also this project. And maybe very, very briefly also in a nutshell, I would like to talk about some of the impacts, since each one of the results and the impact is market oriented. We try to have really this research that will be market and final consumer oriented. First, this project is, I would say the main objective is zero deforestation. So the cooperatives we worked with in Colombia, in Ecuador and Peru were the first cooperatives that complied with this EUDR regulation. So we have provided capacity building, we have provided technical assistance, but also all the logistic behind this compliance with the EUDR zero deforestation regulation for the cocoa value chain. And we had this controlled deforestation, so less than 10 hectares for this 4 years we have been already executing the project. Another impact, environmental impact, that we have identified and classified 20 cocoa genotypes, and each one of these genotypes is already reflected in a chocolate bar. So they're very high quality, high flavor, and very appreciated by customers and clients, cocoa bars. Chocolate bars. We have almost 1,000 hectares of soil restoration, and of course this has under the agroforestry system, and this has a very big impact on productivity, and of course productivity is for us equal to well-being of producers. In terms of, and maybe also because since this work has been done under the agroforestry system, so there is enhanced biodiversity conservation and enhancement of biodiversity, and this is something also that is reflected on the description of this chocolate bar, so it's well appreciated by consumers. Something about very briefly about the socio-economic impacts of this project. So we have this new cooperative in Colombia that has already a commercial agreement with Caoca, with this French company, and they are a provider, supplier to the company. We have also maintained, and we have almost doubled the certification, the organic and the fair trade certification of these 3 cooperatives also, and you can see there are a lot of beneficiaries of this project. We have a new certification, help to obtain and maintain a new certification, which is Rainforest Alliance, that is very much appreciated also by consumers. And now by the end almost of the 4th year and beginning of the 5th year of this project, we have well documented also increase of income of producers. So this is in a nutshell about the project. And now like a very concrete maybe example for this agroforestry decisions through a gender lens. So the slide you see is based on a socioeconomic study performed by C4 ICRAF that are part of the project also, and is done in Peru in the cooperative called Colpa del Oro in the Amazon region of Ucayali. If you know Latin America and know the cocoa value chain, you also know that the cocoa forms part of this ancestral Amazon culture, the knowledge, the heritage. the people there. But unfortunately, cocoa is also one of the expansion of this cocoa plots, one of the drivers or main drivers of deforestation in the Amazon rainforest. So cocoa under the agroforestry system versus monoculture is considered so a good way to balance between profitability and forest conservation. In terms of gender, I should say that we didn't have explicit like gender focus, but we try to follow this 50-50 rule or approach in reaching and benefiting women by including them in the co-design, in the implementation of activities, considering their needs, their necessities of women and men. And as I told you from the beginning, this is, we consider this a zero deforestation project. It has a very clear zero deforestation objective. We considered also from the beginning, and we recognized also the role of women as they're traditionally this preserver of the Amazon forest, of Pachamama, how people call it there. And they play really a crucial role. They're our guardians of the Amazon rainforest. So working with women was very important from us from the beginning. And in this context, this cooperative, Colpa de Loro, has around 30% of their members women, and there are two main age groups. So from 40 to 60 and from 60 to 80. And on the first graph, you can see actually how important you can see this important gender gap in household leadership. So clearly, so men house head, they have the household headship. And of course, this is also very linked to decision-making authorities. And this is something we saw in the nursery of the cooperative, where all members can have seedlings of tree of cocoa. And the concrete example is on the next graph. Women and men have different preferences for tree species. So men wanted always to plant a greater number and actually a proportion, almost 85% of timber trees, which are like mahogany, which are like caipirona, because they have a very high market value. And women wanted more like tree species that are related to their food and nutritional securities, like fruit trees and other medicinal trees. So you have the graph. I'm sorry, it's in Spanish, but I can explain to you. So on the horizontal line, you have the quantity of seedlings demanded by men. And as you can see, like they are clearly caoba is mahogany, caipirona. There are three species, very appreciated and with very high prices at markets. And on the vertical line, you can see preferences by women. And this is palta, which is avocado, and also oranges or lemon. So we have so by applying this gender approach, actually, we have been able to respond to necessities of women, and we have provided the nurseries of the cooperative with this 3 species, but also this became kind of modus operandi of all the cooperative, Copa del Oro, and had a spillover effect to other cooperatives in the area, what kind of trees of a preference for women. And I think this is a great example how business decisions can be shaped or reshaped to respond to necessities, equal necessities to men and women. And then, as I said, I would like to present a very brief, like my general consideration or thoughts of working with businesses, and not explicitly to this project, but in general. First, we institutions, we present an institution that works with scientific evidence, information, and data. And business sector expects us everything to be very market oriented or to respond to market needs. So the first question, or let's say the second question we have from private sector is always, what can you do for me, or what can you do for us? So our research needs to be very much applied to their reality. If we want to work also with the private sector, I see that there is still this language barrier. So somehow our institutions still communicate in quantitative formats. So we present a Word document to them, and they expect us to present an Excel document. So they are more like oriented to numbers and to quantitative data. Then a big issue recently for me is all the signing of NDA. So this is the non-disclosure agreements. So who owns the data? We are publicly funded institutions, and for us publication is key. But we have also these barriers from private sector that sometimes this is information that is confidential for them, or they cannot share this information because of competition. So who holds the data? Who holds the rights? And then I see more and more that there is kind of this timing misalignment. So for us, timing is like, for example, 6 months, and this means that we'll have a research timing enough for us to have a very robust document, evidence, data, or information. And for them, 6 months need to be reduced to 1 month, which is also like, how do we respond to this corporate urgency? And then maybe specifically talking about how business decisions and investment are shaped through this gender lens. So I think that business sector corporates are very much aware of the importance, and they recognize also the importance of gender focus and gender mainstreaming also in their operations, mostly the suppliers that are in the global south, but these, I think, still very limited understanding of how we can demonstrate the value of this gender focus to private sector, or even not how to demonstrate, but how we communicate also this value. So, for example, the gender-sensitive initiative always lead to increased productivities, or at least in the projects I have been involved in. But this is very rarely measured or framed in business terms. And I have seen this not only for productivities, but I have seen, for example, this for traceability in terms of zero deforestation, for example, in this cocoa project in Latin America. So plots that are managed by women are always less deforested. And this is something which is kind of very, very important, and we have to put the emphasis on this, but still somehow we haven't been able to visualize this properly, so it will be of an interesting interest to the private sector. So as a final comment is from my side will be how to present the gender lens shaping business investment decision as a competitive advantage to private sector, and how can we create, communicate, and demonstrate this value, and how can we assure them that this is not a cost but actually an investment. And thank you. You have my email here, and please feel free to contact me if you have more questions about this presentation and about the project.